Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Average Joe's MMA podcast. You're here with Tyler and Sesko. How's it going today, Sesko?
It's fantastic. It's a nice balmy day in Georgia. Good old heat in the room.
Oh, beautiful. So we're coming just off the weekend of UFC 252 with Daniel Cormier and Stipe. Huge matchup. We want to go down the whole main card, and we're going to be starting with the first fight on that card. So that was John Dodson versus Merab Dvalishvili, if I pronounced that correct.
I think.
Yes. So how did you enjoy this fight? How did you see it play out?
I enjoyed it a lot. I was surprised by the result. It was a very dominant performance by Merab. If you saw his wrestling and everything took over. John Dodson, who's a big name in particularly the bantamweight division, I think he was moving either up or down for this fight. I think he was moving up from his flyweight or featherweight or wherever he fought before. He moved. John Dodson moved exceptionally fast for what he's known for, but it seemed as if Merab had his number, just constant pressure, didn't let him get anything off. Good wrestling, even though John Dodson insanely managed to get off the ground every single time he got taken down. So he got taken down 5, 6, 7 times, and every time his hip hit the ground, he popped right up.
Nice.
So a very impressive defense for him, but just got overwhelmed by what seemed to be the better athlete at the time.
Was this the fight where at the beginning they yelled at each other before they started fighting?
I think they did that.
It could have been a prelim fight.
It could have been. I can't remember, but that was awesome. Yeah,
that was
whoever
so funny.
Did that. It was probably Merab. He had a lot of energy around the fight.
I think it was because I feel like a good way to pump yourself up is to do that. So they probably planned it before, but without the crowd, you need something. Because you can imagine, even though you're about to go into a fight, there's no way you'll be as hype as you would have been had there been any kind of fans or audience. When you do high school sports, there's an audience. And now they're in the highest level of what they do, and there's nothing. So it must be shocking. They must have to pump themselves up a little bit extra to get into it.
I imagine it's like a personality trait kind of thing. I imagine there's a lot of UFC fighters who enjoy the crowd, get a visceral rush and pump out of it. But some maybe the more methodical, quiet and thinking guys enjoy the quiet. You know what I mean? So I feel like it's kind of a dynamic shift between what mindset might be better suited going into this.
You could be right. Even Stipe said after, he does not feed off the crowd. This is just another day at the office. It's just not a big deal to him. So I guess you're right. But Merab had so much energy after the fight. He was screaming. He was yelling some stuff. I feel like he might be a name to look out for moving forward. I didn't really know much about him going into this.
I didn't either. It was my first time actually seeing him fight. I really will remember his name going forward. He's got one of those krazy unpronounceable names that once you win enough fights, people learn how to say it, just like we all know how to say Khabib's name now, you know?
Well, I mean, isn't it Habib technically?
Habib.
The K silent.
Well, we don't do silent K's in English, so.
No, exactly. All right, cool. So let's just hop on to the next fight right away. Herbert Burns versus Daniel Pineda. And I know you were just saying that Herbert Burns is Gilbert Burns' brother.
Right. So Herbert and Gilbert Burns run a jiu-jitsu school, believe it or not. A lot of the UFC jiu-jitsu practitioners train under them, interestingly enough, right? So Herbert Burns was the heavy favorite going into this. He was streaking. His brother is also adding a lot of attention to his name. Herbert Burns is a very traditional jiu-jitsu practitioner, so very methodical on the ground against Daniel Pineda, who has been away from the UFC for 6 or 7 years. I can't remember exactly why, whether it was injuries or release from contract, but he came back with a fire lit under him. So stylistically, you saw MMA jiu-jitsu against more traditional jiu-jitsu, whereas Daniel, when he got the dominant position on the ground, you saw a lot of ground and pound, a lot of strikes, a lot of high posturing to avoid getting pulled into submissions, and where Herbert did the more traditional jiu-jitsu route, more moving to advance a position, trying to cinch a submission, it seems. But an amazing performance by Daniel Pineda. For whatever reason he wasn't in the UFC for those last 6 or 7 years, he was out training. He came back, the fire under him. What did you think?
Like you said, I thought it was a great fight. Honestly, you could talk more about it than I can. It's really interesting. I feel like Herbert Burns must have got. Do you think he got this fight because of his brother just doing so well, fighting for the 185 championship coming up?
So let's look at his record. I believe he's been winning some fights.
It says 11-3. It's pretty good.
So he fought in the UFC. his last two fights I see at least are in the UFC against Nate Landwehr, a name I don't understand, and Evan Durham in the catchweight division. So I guess there was like a weird misweight there. Another thing, interestingly enough, to that fight, Herbert came in heavy. Herbert
Oh
missed
yeah,
his weight.
I remember. It didn't Daniel force down the last few pounds, even knowing his opponent was a little heavy.
Yeah, Daniel went ahead and made the weight, and I mean, got an outstanding win against a heavier opponent, and a good chunk of that purse.
I think it was like he was 3 pounds over. It was like pretty significant. So I feel like once you miss weight, you're just kind of like, whatever. I'm going to miss it by it doesn't even matter. I'm losing part of my purse anyway. May as well get as big as possible.
All right, I agree. So it's always like a weird dance. Like, how hard did he try to cut weight? How far in his weight cut did he get? Because if you're, deep into a weight cut and you decide to back off, you're still compromised regardless. Like, even if you didn't lose the last couple pounds.
I feel like most fighters are compromised because they come in too heavy, and it's because of like wrestling. A lot of them come from wrestling where you have to do that constantly. But when you're not just grappling and you're being punched in the face, like you can get a concussion so much more easily. So I feel like fighters should be coming in lighter, even though they're like, even Stipe, like it looks like, why is this guy even a heavyweight? But the weight doesn't matter nearly as much as your game plan and your physicality. So you have a guy.
It's your frame as well. Stipe has a very a true heavyweight frame. If he wanted to be 265, that doesn't seem to be problematic for him at all, I would say, right?
I didn't realize he was like all torso too. They were saying I think Sean O'Malley has like a longer leg length than Stipe.
Leg to hip, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's about half the weight limit. It was
and that's 135 to him, who's like basically 235, like 100-pound difference, and he's less leg length.
I mean, I see why he doesn't throw many kicks.
Yeah, that's so true. But that's why his punches are so devastating, and he can hit those punches while moving backwards. He doesn't have to post up on his feet. The dude's all upper body.
Yeah, he has excellent boxing that complements that giant frame of his. He's really wide across the shoulders.
All right, so now,
sorry. Go ahead.
No,
I was going to talk about the main fight, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I was about to say we're working our way up. The next fight would be Junior Dos Santos versus Rosenstrike, which I thought it was a good matchup to make, but it was kind of a gatekeeping thing. Junior Dos Santos he was a powerhouse in the past, but the past few fights he's definitely looking a little shaky. It seems like he takes one big punch and that he just kind of falters after that. And our prediction going into this fight was exactly what happened, right?
Right. Yeah, we thought Rosenstruck was going to get in there and just use overwhelming physicality and force, and that's what it seemed like. Though he was patient. He didn't like Francis Ngannou in there. He did his game plan very well. You saw the 85 kickboxing fights. You saw a lot of experience in how he moved and how he blocked. It seemed like I didn't see a situation where Junior Dos Santos was going to win that match, even while we were watching it. It didn't seem like his blows were landing too much power and too much damage to Rosenstruck, and Rosenstruck was just hammering him. So I think I was going to say, I think Rosenstruck still has a lot of good fights in him, and honestly, he's probably still a contender. His only loss came to getting hammered by Francis, which is neither here nor there, really, right? Like that can happen to anyone, but he could also potentially survive and persevere later on.
Well, what's really telling is how he was able to come back and not be like Francis after he lost to Stipe. Because he was undefeated going to that Francis fight, so he was 10-1 after. He's like, the big question was, is he going to come out and be a little tepid? Was it going to be another Derek Lewis versus Ngannou, where both fighters had been knocked out recently? They both don't want to take too many chances. You're right. He was very patient, and he was pretty much dominant from the top to the bottom of the fight.
I think, I think that testifies to his really impressive and long record of kickboxing. He's been there before. He's lost before. Mm-hmm. So he's been in the ups and downs of a different sport that's pretty similar. I think hearing his story about him losing to Francis, going right back and playing the next fight, I think, part of that is like the panic that the matchmakers want the next big thing always. Yep. So a streaking star will take precedence over a journeyman who's been doing pretty well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's not like his hype train was not completely derailed. I feel like losing to Francis is just, unless you're top two, like Stipe is able to control him on the ground, but who knows? Their next matchup, let's see if Stipe could take some of those shots, because I don't know. I'm a little worried, but after seeing him be the greatest of all time and win so many fights as the underdog, I feel like Stipe is probably just going to pull it out again.
Yeah. I think he's got it in him, but at some point, like with Francis, the damage just catches up to you. How
Mm.
many times can you fight Francis? And I mean, at least not once a year, right? Or not more than once a year. If Stipe does fight Francis and wins or loses, I can't imagine him coming back from that anytime soon.
And Francis
But
doesn't really take damage. He hasn't been knocked out. The dude
right.
his chin is still golden. He'll walk through punches just to get his punch because he knows he hasn't been compromised before. And if you've never been knocked, I don't know if he's ever been knocked out, but professionally, I've never seen him be knocked out. I feel like his chin must be like granite,
Yeah, I agree.
like the rest of his body. I mean, pretty
Absolutely.
much.
Yeah, the lack of damage to his head certainly like testify or attributes to him willing to get in there. And maybe if he does get stung and dropped one of these times, well, the thing we've noticed with Francis is the one weakness we saw is like his mental game seems to be against Derek Lewis was entirely compromised.
Yeah,
he couldn't think. He was afraid to engage against a bigger, I don't want to say scarier, but in some ways, like he's a frightening opponent to Francis because he can be knocked out by him as well.
he met a mirror matchup. He meant that, but then to counter that with what he did to Rosenstrike, maybe he did overcome that. Maybe that was a one-off thing. Who knows?
I mean, let's hope so, right? We want to see the best out of these guys, but that seems to be the one weakness is that Francis at a certain point, even particularly if you look at the Stipe fight, at some point you saw him pretty much quit.
Mm-hmm.
That third round stopping power that Derek Lewis and Rosenstruck have shown. I don't know. We haven't at least had to see that from Francis yet. We haven't seen him go late rounds and bring his power with him.
And he does slow down dramatically. Every time he goes later, you'll see him. His movement's just not as clean.
And I think that takes a lot away from him.
I agree. So heading on to the co-main event, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Vera. And I mean, that was such a shame what happened. For those who weren't able to watch the fight, it seemed to be going very well for Sean O'Malley. It looked like it was going to be the train's going to continue kind of situation. And then he does one little fake, moves forward, trips over his toes, and seems to blow out his knee or something. Tries to get up, and then Vera just takes care of business. So to me, that was just incredibly disappointing. His hype train's still there because it looked like he was just injured from one-off thing. But then an argument I've heard is that people think he might just be fragile. Like some people are just their tendon strength isn't there. They may be great fighters technique-wise, but their bodies don't hold up. Do you have an opinion one way or the other? Do you think it was a one-off thing, or do you think he might just be more fragile? Because he has been hurt in the past, and I think it was a knee injury.
I think his injury. I think he's had. I don't know the diagnosis of the injury, but from what it looked like, he's had the same injury fighting before.
Mm-hmm.
He got this in a fight, but in the last round, and he managed to stave off his opponent and just take it to decision and win. But I think from what I've been reading, again, I don't think anyone's been shared his official diagnosis as to what the injury was.
Well, I heard they did an X-ray, and it wasn't broken, but I think they're doing an MRI to see like the tendon stuff, and I'm sure that's what it is. I'm sure it's like an MCL, ACL kind of thing.
So what it could have been is I was hearing that he's had damage in that leg before. He's been fighting injuries before, and tall, lanky guys like that, like you said, they have a certain fragility to their frame. If not the bones themselves, like you get hit on those like skinnier muscles, which causes the nerves to fire a little weird. I think maybe he was compromised when he took that step, and the step caused something else to be maybe tear or hyperextend, or it looked like a real uncomfortable step, but it looked like his foot was a little dead, like he couldn't get the nerves to pick it up right.
I heard the calf kick from Marlon Vera may have done it. Like the calf kick hit a nerve possibly, which totally could be true.
I mean, it happened to Henry Cejudo more than once. And is one of his fights against Demetrius Johnson, I think. Demetrius got him right on the calf, and his foot went numb. He was dragging his foot around the cage for a bit. So it's certainly possible. I think it's part of that could be that Sean is an up-and-coming martial artist. He wasn't raised like some of these ethnic fighters fighting since they were a young age. And part of that could be the body conditioning. And I don't mean like running and stuff like that, but kicking hard stuff that Brazilians tend to do. Yeah. If nothing else, it causes them to deaden those nerves in their legs to prevent maybe that from happening. So maybe it's a physical thing, which physical things are great. He can overcome that. He can train against that. I agree. I think it was good for him if he's going to take a loss on a weird injury, like career-wise and hype train-wise, because this fight has a good chance of maybe being done again. Or if going into his next opponent, I think he can still carry all of his confidence as long as he can keep his body in the right condition to do so.
I think you're totally right on the conditioning, because I remember from playing football, we would do a drill called angry hands. You'd grab onto the guy's shirt, and they would just whack away at your hands to make the nerves. So when you do feel that pain when it deadens the nerve, so you wouldn't feel the pain when you're in a situation of the game where you're going to need to grab on no matter what. Um, maybe that's what it is. But then you see a guy like Israel Adesanya, who I don't know if he had been fighting forever, but he seems so durable for a guy that's very lanky.
Well,
I don't understand how he can
he has a 70 fight kickboxing career, I think. So I think he's a pretty seasoned fighter, just like Yorinzo or Rosenstruck, however you say his name.
So but I don't know how long he's been fighting. Like Sean O'Malley, I also don't know how long he's been fighting, but I bet it wasn't since he was like a kid.
Right. I think I heard one of the announcers say that. I think Sean's entry into martial arts has been mixed martial arts, whereas someone like long and lanky like Israel's been kickboxing for, I mean, at least a decade with that many fights, right?
I don't know, because I knew he was like a break dancer back in the day, so I don't know at what point he became a fighter. But hopefully we see Sean come back soon. And the way he was moving, it was brilliant. The fakes he was throwing, the guy very bit on every single fake he threw. Right. So technique-wise, there's no worries. It looks like this guy could be on a roll. It's really about how durable he's going to be.
And he's young. Like, this would have been an awful injury to see in like a DC type character later in his career. But he's a young guy. He can condition his body. Maybe it would be worth it for him to analyze like building his body up a little thicker and moving up a weight class to maybe make him a little more durable, right?
He's like 5'11".
He's very tall.
5'10", 5'11" in the 135-pound division. Just for reference, DC is 5'11", and he was heavyweight, so that could be true. All right, well, now we get into the most important fight, the Stipe versus Daniel Cormier. Just to get it off the bat, I thought it was a brilliant fight. Like, thoroughly entertained. Every fight they had, they often say, "Oh, this fight's going to be good. That fight's going to be good." But every single fight they had was guaranteed to be good, and it played out that way. The fact that it went to decision, I also think was I like that it went to a decision. The fact that one was knocked out the first fight, one was knocked out the second. We got to see how they are fully as martial artists, and I think it just shows that Stipe was superior, is superior, and now is definitely the greatest UFC heavyweight of all time, possibly the greatest of all time. I mean, his only competition would be Fedor. So it's like Michael Jordan versus LeBron at that point.
Yeah. I thought it was an excellent fight. You normally the longer heavyweight fights are a little more challenging just because the guys get tired, but both men were in excellent condition. It looked like both men were fighting and doing strategies and punching.
But I will say DC did not, we talked about this. DC does not rely on wrestling either because the physicality, like his body can't take it, or conditioning wise, he just can't last as long doing it. He didn't even really attempt to wrestle much in this matchup at all.
He claimed that is because Stipe's defense was there for the takedowns. So maybe Stipe was doing some crazy film analysis and was just in the right position and be avoiding whatever DC would have tried. But I have a hard time believing that DC as an Olympian couldn't if he was able to do takedowns and do that stuff at his highest horsepower, highest gear. I think he could have taken Stipe down. But yeah, to your point, maybe it's injuries, maybe it's age, maybe it's conditioning. Could be a combination of all those things to make him not want to wrestle.
But remember the last fight, he totally gassed out in the fourth round. And in that first round, he wrestled heavily and he carried Stipe for like a good 30 seconds. I think he realized, like, oh shit, I don't think I can actually fight 5 rounds if I do this. But I think he had a better chance if he did do that. I understand he would have gotten tired. Maybe the same result would have happened as the last fight, but that's his bread and butter. Like, that's how DC went. He's not like, if you're 5'11" facing a guy that's 6'5", you could be the best in the world. You could be Mike Tyson, but a bigger guy just has an extra edge over you no matter what you do. That it's very difficult to overcome. He couldn't extend his hands anymore because he knew he was going to be hit by body shots, which I think kind of killed his striking game.
I was hoping he would have some kind of adjustment for the body shots. Other than just not tighter. He was, but it felt like it was at a sacrifice of his offensive output.
True.
I was hoping he'd come up with a better strategy of like being able to defend himself and still be able to cause good damage to Stipe. Though, I mean, he got a lot of good shots off, particularly with that ducking overhand right that seems to land all the time. which Stipe, if you notice, Stipe was always when they were engaged in wrestling or any sort of thing where they're pushing against each other, in order to prevent him from doing that, like overhand right on the break, Stipe always had his hand on DC's right hand to keep it down. So I thought that was an amazing. I thought the strategy of Stipe going in seemed superior than the strategy of DC.
Mm-hmm, me too. But I also feel like it was down to capabilities. I feel like Stipe is just the better athlete, at least at this time. If DC was 5 years younger, I don't know. But right now, I feel like Stipe is definitely a superior athlete. And also his strategy of keeping him against the cage, not allowing him the space to get that uppercut. He actually landed it a few times. The one he got the KO with in the first fight, he landed that punch. But Stipe, every time, he must have known it was coming because he like tucked his chin in. So even if he got hit, he'd just be able to take the punch, no problem.
Yeah, it looked like Stipe was able to eat those strikes better than Daniel was able to eat Stipe's strikes. It looks like when Stipe hit Daniel, it looked like it jarred him a little bit every single time, where it looked like DC was jabbing and using that hook on Stipe all the time. And Stipe was eating that damage, it seems, without too much trouble. And that could be being a true heavyweight gives you a certain durability, just having a bigger bone structure, bigger head, bigger jaw. All those things kind of play to his advantage there.
And going back to the body shot thing for DC, he's got a lot of room to cover, man. I don't know how you defend that entire gut. Like, what do you like? You bend over.
Such a wide torso.
He's so wide. Yeah.
I always notice that when he's like shirtless, getting walking out to a fight, he is insanely wide.
His abs must be just completely jacked.
Has to be. I mean, for him to be that strong, every part of him has to be significant.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I mean, that's pretty much all I had to say about this fight. Do you have any closing thoughts?
I thought this fight, as it went on, it progressively got better and better. I enjoyed all of the. I don't want to say I enjoyed the eye pokes because they're an unfortunate.
We definitely have to talk about that. Yeah,
we definitely. I think so. When I saw DC poke Stipe in the eye, my initial concern was, if DC wins this, he could win because of an eye compromise or stuff. It sort of tainted the fight to me. And then when DC got his eye almost gouged out, it seems, right? I thought it was almost an equalizing foul, as bad as it is to compare the two, of course. But I think when that happened to DC, then in my head, at least as a spectator, I thought, if DC wins this now it's real. Now it got revalidated because the foul back and forth is the same.
So DC had done this to Stipe. Stipe had to get eye surgery going into this fight, and that's why it took so long to make.
Right.
It's definitely played a huge factor in all these fights, and the fact that it continues to be a problem and no one's even attempting to fix it is like so bad in my opinion, because I feel like it's something that can so easily be fixed. I will say I feel bad for DC, and hopefully there's no lasting damage. But like when I played sports and I would do like a small cheap shot, let's say I'm playing hockey and the guy doesn't have pads in the back of his calf, and I like hit him with the stick there while I'm defending the net or something. Yeah, like that's not allowed. But the ref didn't see it. It's whatever. In MMA, you're given a free pass to get one foul that can dramatically change the fight that will not affect you. So to not use that at the highest level, it's kind of a detriment to yourself. So I understand why it's happened and why DC has done it, but it just seems like big karmic justice for this whole thing to basically be ended by him getting the worst eye poke you've ever seen. And I know that's awful to say, but that's just how I see it.
Have you did you watch DC and Stipe 2?
Yeah.
So when I was watching that fight, they showed the replays and the slow-mos. DC was doing that dirty boxing. He was thumbing Stipe's eye every single chance he got. So that's to your point. This is just karmic justice. Sometimes you eye poke, sometimes you get poked. The champion works through it, right?
And he said the reason he did it is because when he trained with a big glove and you train boxing, sometimes you would flick your wrist out to get that hit. So you're not really hitting him, you're kind of tapping him. But in my head, I'm like, then you're training wrong. You're building the wrong muscle memory. You can't do that. But then again, it's so easy to eye poke. It shouldn't even be. Why don't they have some kind of curved gloves that just make it not a thing? I don't understand why they don't take some kind of measure. I've also heard they've never actually tested the UFC gloves in place right now. They've done no testing on these gloves at all. It's kind of sick.
That's oddly not surprising to me for whatever reason. The UFC, like at this point, it's a professional organization with a lot of good infrastructure and stuff in place, but it was like ad hoc put together. Just like 10 phone calls overnight, get some fighters in a place, film it, and go.
Hmm.
So I can understand why some stuff got grandfathered in, like the honestly kind of shitty gloves that they use.
But
I've heard that other
dude,
organizations have.
so I was gonna say there's been people that have patented gloves and offered to the UFC to buy them, but the UFC's like, no, we want to own the patent to the gloves. So this is all kind of like legal bullshit that's stopping this whole thing from happening. But eventually, you're gonna have a fighter have his eye poked and sue the UFC, saying you weren't able to protect me like how you should have.
Yeah,
Maybe it's in their contract they can't do that, but specifically something as illegal as that's so easy to do. I don't know, man. You might be able to win that case.
maybe if nothing else, class action. Like watch a lot of these current fighters like later on in life get like lasting eye damage, like the eye injuries catch up to them. Maybe down the line there'll be a class action kind of thing where they group together to say like your organization didn't do enough to prevent this.
I mean, even Bisping, like it was a kick, but the guy was on juice. Like he probably could have, like maybe he's like, I'm not going to do it because I want to work for the UFC. But man, he probably could have won something.
Yeah, Michael Bisping's like the worst case of it. His eyes basically just suspended in his head to keep it alive.
Wait, it's still in his head? I thought they took it out and put a glass eye in there.
Oh, I think you're right. They did. It's real unfortunate, man. That's the kind of injuries like you really don't want to see fighters get. Like, a smashed knee, a torn shoulder, even like a concussion or a broken nose, all things that can come back like pretty easily. I think something is super useful to just your very existence, your eyes. And I feel like the organization should do more to defend it if it can.
Yeah, and even dick kicks. At least like you get a few minutes. You could shake. I mean, it sucks. You're gonna have like a feeling in your gut, but like you could shake it off in a few minutes. It's not really gonna cause lasting damage. I mean, unless like they snap your cup somehow. I don't know. It's a steel cup. I hope that doesn't happen. But these guys kick pretty hard. Yeah, they should just have like a red splotch where you can't kick on the shorts.
I agree. Yeah, the dick kicks are unfortunate, but I'd much rather take a dick kick than anything to my eye.
Yeah, me too. The problem with the eye thing is it would prevent me from wanting to get in the ring to fight because I know the risk to what I'm doing, and concussion is very bad. But not being able to see for the rest of your life is probably one of the worst things.
Yeah, DC's eye looked terrible. It looked like it was pushed back into his skull.
I think he's going to be okay, but who knows? Maybe he's not.
From what I was reading, it's a torn cornea.
That's what I saw. Yeah,
it sounds pretty bad, but I think that's certainly within the realm of fixable as long as you're not like.
Well, there's different levels.
It over and over and over again.
Like we don't know the severity. I imagine it's pretty severe, but I don't know. Hopefully, he'll be able to see. And maybe he was exaggerating because he just wanted to make it seem like it was worse than it was. I don't know.
I don't know. It looked pretty bad.
It definitely looked really bad, but you got to. I understand afterwards he came out. He's like, great fight. It was great fighting you the whole time. But I feel like in the moment when that just happens to you, you just lose the championship fight that you knew you were expecting to win and retire. Like some emotions are a little hot. So
I was very impressed with his post fight. The fact that he was even willing to give a post fight,
even able to after five. He's a heavyweight. 5 rounds. The dude's 5'11", 235 pounds. Like that's crazy. He lasted 25 minutes. It's crazy.
Yeah, and he after all that, he got a little emotional, but he kept himself in check, as you saw. I want to give every hats off to him, but it feels real bad to be DC. I feel like I read somewhere he's now the bridesmaid of 2 different divisions. He's overshadowed by John Jones at light heavyweight. Now he's overshadowed by Stipe at heavyweight.
Well, it sounds bad. Think about everyone that never even won it. I mean, he's won 2 championships. That dude, sure, he's not going to be the greatest, but the dude has a crazy legacy. He's going to be known as one of the greatest, at least of this era. He's definitely going to the Hall of Fame. So all the best to DC. Great fighting career. It ended this way, but it doesn't take away from everything he's done and everything he's accomplished. He was really stuck by 2 guys in his whole career after competing the Olympics for X number of years. So
and beating so many people like on his way there. He has I think it's 15 wins at heavyweight, probably like another handful more at light heavyweight. Very impressive career. Beat a lot of guys. Like
he also probably could have gotten more heavyweight wins if it weren't for Cain Velasquez being in the heavyweight division, and he didn't want to fight him because he was his friend.
Right. And also the weirdness with all the John Jones drama and waiting for John to come back, or if he's not going to come back. And if he is, I feel like a lot of the dramatics around that took away from DC's career, but ability to maybe fight other people, you know?
I agree, but I also think even if they offered the fight today, I don't think he takes it. What? He beats him, he's 1-2 versus John Jones.
Yeah.
Sure, John Jones was on steroids like both times. But I don't think they see it like that, you know. And the world doesn't see it like that.
Yeah, well, it's not like DC got. I know steroids like affect every single part of your game, but it's not like you got like out muscled and like pushed up against the cage the entire fight. You got out techniqued. You got hit by stuff that coaches and really intelligent fighters like see. It's hard to beat John at that game, like with or without steroids. He's shown, right?
But it's also just a physiological matchup issue. Again, just being so short against the peak of the peak level guys. He's been a lot of big guys, no doubt. But against the guys that are as skilled as him, if they're that much bigger, it's very difficult for him to win.
And keep in mind, John Jones is the king of the eye poke.
I just heard actually today he vacated his light heavyweight title. He says he wants to fight at heavyweight, but how is he going to fight at heavyweight? Because look at the division. We have Stipe who's going to fight Ngannou. That's probably at least 6 months away. Like he just had a 5-round fight, so it's going to be a while. Then you got Derek Lewis who's killing people. You got Curtis Blades who's killing people. I mean, when do you throw him in? And if he's only going to take a championship fight, I don't know when he gets the shot. It's going to be a while.
I agree. I don't know how that's going to go because, like you said, there's so many interesting competitors getting ready. Certainly, Francis is next in line. If Francis wins, then John will have to fight Francis, and that's a terrifying prospect, I think.
Yeah, it's such a top-heavy division.
Yeah, absolutely. The top of the top is a terrifying group of killers.
And then
all of them outside of each other out.
Outside of the top, you have Greg Hardy.
Yeah, Greg Hardy.
He's the new gatekeeper.
Just smashing people that are unranked.
Men, women, pregnant girlfriends, doesn't matter.
His last opponent was it was in the Orlando bubble when they were doing it there. So Greg Hardy got paid I think 100, 150 grand for his appearance, a bunch of money. And his opponent got $4,000. Just to give you a taste of the tier of people they're putting him up against.
Well, so he did face that guy who's number 5, the super tall guy. Do you remember his name?
Volkanovski? No, Volkanovski's the little guy.
I'm just gonna look at the top 15 because I feel like it'll just show up.
I think didn't Derek Lewis knock him out in the last second as well? Same guy.
Yep. Alexander Volkov, who's ranked number 8 right now. Oleinik is ranked number 10. I feel like he should be a little higher. Alistair Overeem's number 5. That's kind of surprising. Wait.
Alistair's always up there. He's always fighting top 5 competition. Alistair's one of the highest paid guys in the UFC just because of his veterancy.
Mm-hmm. And he only faces top tier opponents. And he always does well, but I'll say over time his fights are way less entertaining because they have to be. He physically is not the person he was. He's not Uberim anymore, so he tries to fight tactfully. And then against Rosenstrike, fights a beautiful fight. The last 5 seconds, he's like, I got this, run away. Lip cut open, ended. What do you do?
I think if Alistair wants to keep fighting, he should go to a steroid league. And there's no shame in that. Go fight Fedor, you know?
Do you know how popular that would be? Who wouldn't tune a Brock Lesnar versus Alistair Overeem 2.0 where they're both juiced up to the gills? That would be awesome. Dude, I want to see John Cena fight. I want to see John Cena versus Brock Lesnar.
Dude, John Cena. I bet John Cena has even shorter legs than Stipe.
Yeah,
he's all torso. If you've ever looked at him. I don't. What class? I guess it's all heavy. I want to see a super heavyweight. I want them to bring some freaks in.
Yeah, we've talked about this, and the issue I guess they would see is the depth. They don't see many guys, but in my opinion, you're not going to see any depth until you create it. And on that note, we've both spoken about this. I don't know how you do it with the athletic commissions, but why not have the super heavyweights use steroids? These are just like elephants. Just let them be as big as possible. That's what the people want. It might be a freak show, but the people want to see a freak show. And isn't this all about the people and the promotion and people watching?
Yeah, the UFC's doing, and all these fighting commissions and mixed martial arts organizations, they juggle an interesting balance of Are we like a fight promoter? You know what I mean? Just trying to make freak shows and attract eyes and do whatever. And then they're also trying to be, in some ways, like a respectable athletic league, like
Exactly.
NFL or NBA, which has standard uniforms and all sorts of rules and regulations and stuff. And UFC's, they managed to stick in the middle of that between the two for a good long time, to the benefit of organization and to the cost of the fighters, because the fighters get paid nothing compared to like what they used to be making with sponsorship dollars and everything.
Yeah, I think that's disgusting. The UFC has a monopoly. They do a great job, but at the end of the day, you're right. It's a game of – I see it as a game of more promotion. You get paid based off how many people view you. In baseball, you get paid about how good you are. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
sure, people are going to watch you, but they're going to watch you because you're good. But if you're John Jones, you're not getting Conor McGregor money, even though you've been the champion for 10 years. And this is why he's actually vacating his title. He's like, look, they told me they're not going to renegotiate anything. I'm done. Like, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I feel like that's a pretty good stand to make, because hopefully in the future it'll make them have to pay people more money. Hopefully there will be some kind of union, like Mark Hunt's trying to get around. So we'll see.
Yeah, I think like to your example before, if you're on a baseball team and you have a lot of talent, but you're also behind the name of the baseball team, of the Yankees or the Red Sox or whatever, and you've got a pre-installed fan base there waiting for you to appreciate your talents. It seems like these fighters are basically on their own. In order to make your own name, talk your own shit. In some ways, even organize their own fights with call-outs in some way, against each other's, and make interesting beefs and stuff in order to hype up fights. Like, look at Masvidal versus Usman. They talked a lot of venom going back and forth into there, but afterwards, like, you could see, like, that was clearly a lot of business. And I feel like to me, that's a negative thing. That's a fault of the UFC. These fighters want to make money out of their names, and you're impeding them in some way by not allowing them to get independent sponsorships, to make their own deals and stuff. But even though, like, you see, like, to your point, the most popular, highest paid fighters, the McGregors, the Brock Lesnars, this is exactly what they do. But Brock Lesnar hasn't won a fight in like 6 years. He would still come in and
millions. He would make millions off one fight.
Exactly. And you can't do that. You can't like be in any other organization. Oh, I've been losing for 6 years. No, that's fine. Come get your millions. That doesn't happen in other places that are, like, I guess, respectable sports organizations, but it happens at promotions, which people are fine. Like you said, you want to see that freak show.
This is why people identify so heavily with their own countries, their identities, any kind of identity they have, because that's all they have. They have whatever group they are part of to appeal to. Or you're like a Sean O'Malley who's like, people like smoking weed, be a fan of me kind of thing. But you have to have some kind of shtick. In one way, I like it because it makes it a little more entertaining. But on the other hand, if you're trying to be as legitimate as possible, you're just not helping out very much. But how do you stop? How do you switch from a promotion to a league when fighting has always been a prize fighting kind of situation? It's never been like you're in this league. They've had tournaments before, but they've never had there's a season and then you become champion at the end.
So, I see sort of two routes. The PFL, the Professional Fighting League, is trying to do something like that, where they have a season every year, and then the best out of that season determines the rankings of a tournament, and then they do a tournament, and the last person standing gets the big prize money at the end. I think it's like $1 million per division. So I think that's the closest thing to like a mixed martial arts NFL or NBA. But I personally don't think the UFC wants to go in that direction. I think they're super comfortable in this sort of like hybrid thing that they're doing, because they're making so much money off of paying fighters so little. And as shitty as that sounds, I mean, that's a nice business model when you're bringing in like hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of years, right?
I can't fault them, but I also would hope for something better.
I worry that they're going to spend – the UFC is living off of prestige, basically. It's understood that this is the best fighting organization.
They're also the best promoters in sports. I don't think anyone is as good at promoting anything as the UFC is with their own fights. If you see some of the highlights and montages, even if you know nothing about sports or fights, it like gets you pumped up. And then they'll create these storylines out of nothing. Imagine baseball, every game they had to come up with a new reason why they hated each other. And that's the only reason people watched, But UFC successfully has done that for over 2 decades, which is crazy.
Yeah, but I think part of that is also they have the biggest names, the biggest talent, and the best marketing. And that gave them a lot of prestige that they're able to spend on doing things like not paying fighters a lot of money. So in one of the prelim cards, they had a fighter who was, I think 3 weeks before, fought for the title at a different organization. And he's coming to the UFC to fight at a prelim undercard for $4,000. So it's just a weird, there's levels to this thing clearly, and UFC still at the top. But how much prestige can you burn before something like a ONE FC makes its way to the United States and people start? I personally think kickboxing and like the different other martial arts variations are going to catch big, particularly with the mixed martial arts community.
I would really hope so. I think kickboxing is super interesting, but personally, I would like a mix of like kickboxing, Muay Thai. I feel like you should be able to use elbows. That's the only thing. I feel like kickboxing with elbows, I think that's ideal. And you may just say that's Muay Thai, but I feel like the style is just it's different, you know?
I mean, if they behave like a promoter, which is gives the organizations a lot of flexibility to do things like that. You can negotiate rules. Back in the old school pre-UFC days, the fighters would be like, okay, we're doing this. You can kick, no takedowns, no knees, but elbows. Like just weird combinations.
And then gi, no gi.
Right. Or some guys just come in and gis anyway. It was a whole – it gives you a lot of flexibility to determine your rules. You can do catch weights. You can do all sorts of interesting freak show stuff. And I think –
it takes away – the catch weight takes away from the legacy. I think that's they're like, what's the point in doing a catch weight if we can't say this is a title or we're not going to make a division for this? What's the point? No one's going up or down the rankings. There's no kind of storyline we can build off that. So I think it's a promoter's point of view of why they wouldn't do something that's catch weight, even though who wouldn't want like 160, 165 pound? Like that would be awesome. The division's so stacked at 155 that you could easily separate and have two more divisions. So
I agree. I think they should certainly have more divisions.
And 220. Why is there no two? Stipe, he probably would choose to be a heavyweight regardless because he's a bad motherfucker.
Go for both. Yeah.
He would probably go for both. But there are a ton of guys that fight at 205 that wouldn't want to cut all the weight they do, but they have to. Like even an Anthony Smith, I feel like he would be fine at like a 220.
Yeah, and I think that might reduce the amount of people who do these insane weight cuts. Like find a better place to be your home. Do what I think ONE FC does hydration testing. Like they take your piss, they do some science with it. They let you know like, hey, you weigh 205 pounds. It doesn't matter if you cut down to 160 like a monster. You still weigh this much, and we expect you to fight at that weight class. Which I think is the whole point of weight classes is you want two guys to be the same size fighting each other.
And like just from a layman's perspective, my girlfriend was like, wait, so they weigh in, but then they have a whole day to just eat whatever they want and get big and just completely change their weight. So they say it's 155, but they're probably like 175. She's like, that's just silly. Why would you do that? And I agree. From like an average fan's perspective, why would I want to see someone that says they're competing at 185 not be 185? I mean, they could be 10, 15, 20 pounds different when the fight starts. That's ridiculous.
And to the other side of the argument, though, the amount of weight you can cut is directly correlated to your physical conditioning. So I was looking up a little bit about Paulo Acosta, who's fighting Israel Adesanya.
He's like 230, like jacked, like visible abs and all.
He weighed in at 220 the other day. So he's planning on making, I think, a 35-pound weight cut to 185, which is insane. That's more than 10% of his body weight, more than 15, I think.
And he looks like he could fight right now, and you'd be like, wow, he looks great.
Yeah, he could fight in the light heavyweight division. I mean, he's not that much smaller than Stipe at this point. Yeah. I think, though, the reason he can make these astronomical cuts is because of how he trains. Having such little body fat, having like such a certain muscular density allows you to dehydrate those muscles and rehydrate them at a later time. Like you can't do that if you're fat. Like if you've got 20 pounds of fat on you, that fat doesn't shrink in the sauna. You know what I mean? It doesn't dehydrate. It is what it is. So it could be like a competition of the Warriors resolve in like the long game, you know? So I can see it.
Yeah, but that's kind of silly. Like I want them to be competing the night of. I don't need to know they had to be mentally strong to get to this point. They're literally fighting in a fucking ring. They're beating the shit out of each other. That proves enough to me. The fact that you can lose weight and get through the pain of losing weight, that's great. It shows you're tough, but all these guys are tough. At the highest level, good luck not being tough. Like, I don't know. Like that can't be the barometer of how tough you are, how much weight you can lose without dying. Like who wants to see that?
It has to come down to the organization because The fighters will take any inch of advantage they can get for good reason. You're cage fighting. You're going into a situation where you can potentially get hurt.
Yeah,
I mean,
when you grab the fence because you don't want to be taken down, and they're like, "Don't grab the fence," it's a reaction. What do you? I mean, like, make a fence that they can't grab. Make a mesh fence. Like, I don't know why this is so difficult. So many of the problems we have are easily fixable
through equipment. I completely agree. But yeah, it's up to the organization. The fighters will never stop of their own volition. Like just because like there are Paulo Acostas out there who's super sized for his weight class, is 13-0, I think, just smashes everyone he gets his hands on because he's so much bigger. And as long as that's allowed, fighters are going to do it. I mean, why wouldn't?
And he's like T-Rex arms. He's a little short arms. But the thing about short arms is you can go quick. Like, it's like a Mike Tyson thing. You get throw a right hook like instantly. And a guy like Adesanya has a lot more room to cover when he throws it.
Yeah, he's got those really big hooking biceps. So depending on like how you punch, like his right hook and left hook have to be insane, the amount of torque he can pull on it.
I think he's actually going to beat Adesanya.
I think so.
We don't have to fully discuss it now, but just as a blanket statement, I really think he can win.
I think so too. He's 220. That's so big.
Like, he's going to do what I think, or what I thought Yoel was going to do to Adesanya.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that one. I think that's going to be one of the fights of the year, potentially. A beautiful stylistic matchup.
Excellent UFC 252. Looking towards the future. Please, everyone, like, comment, subscribe. Be back for more content. We'll be here weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. Sometimes we'll live stream the fights. But all things MMA, come to us. We'll see you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.